You're probably not going to sell anything if you're the one doing all of the talking on a sales call, but that's easier said than done because sometimes you have prospects that just won't open up and they're giving you one-word answers, or you might be like me and you're really excited about the thing that you have to sell, and so you end up rambling, which isn't good either. And today I'm going to talk about some things that I do that help make my talk-to-listen ratio with a prospect equitable and get them to open up on a sales call. So without me rambling further on the intro, let's get into this thing. Number one seems sort of obvious, but it's get your head right before the sales call even starts. You will win more deals by being interested than you will by being interesting. And most salespeople get this wrong. They think they're gonna win deals by having an amazing product or a really killer pitch, and that's not really the case. You'll actually win more deals by being interested in your prospect and their business and their problems. And so change your goal on sales calls from being interesting to being interested. And that mindset impacts number two, and frankly, all of the tips in this video. But number two is kick off your sales calls by handing the other person the mic. Most sellers kick off their sales calls with lame small talk, or they set a really stiff upfront agenda. Instead, hand the other person the mic, and what that sounds like is, Emma, I have to imagine that there's a lot of salespeople that want to get on your calendar, and I can't imagine you meet with every single one of them. What prompted you to want to meet with me today? And when you ask that question, you'd be amazed at how much the other person will actually share. And so instead of you trying to pull information out of them one question at a time, when you ask that big question, why'd you even meet with me, you'll get way more information. And so kick off your meetings, give them the floor, hand them the mic. Number three is you should be the one asking the questions. In any sales call, the person asking the questions is the person that controls the conversation. And if you didn't realize, you want to be the person controlling the conversation. But where sellers get tripped up is if we use the tip that I gave earlier, where I ask the prospect, hey, why'd you even meet with me? Why'd you take this call? You'll often hear stuff like, Nick, we're looking for a new accounting system. We looked at your website. It looks like you guys might be able to help. Could you tell me a little bit about your system? And what most sellers will do is tell them a little bit about the system. But that's a problem because when I tell them about the system, they'll ask me another question and I'll answer that question. And then they'll ask me another question. And it ends up being this terrible call where they're just asking questions and I'm just giving answers. And so you can make that conversation more equitable and have some back and forth by responding to their question with a question of your own. And what this might look like is when they ask you to tell them about your system, you might say, Dave, I'm happy to tell you about our accounting system. I'd probably talk about it for 10 hours straight if you wanted me to. So that I don't talk for 10 hours straight about stuff that you might not care about, could you give me a sense of what you're even looking for and what matters to you as you think about the next accounting system that you guys buy? And what will happen is they will respond with some of their criteria that they're looking for in their next purchase. And I can use that information to then target how I explain what I do when I do give them a pitch later in the call. And so anytime that you feel like you're losing control of the call or you've been talking way too much, you should think about, okay, who's been asking the questions? And if it's not you, find a way to respond to their question with a question of your own. Number four is a technique that I call the playback. Anytime that your prospect shares a decent chunk of information, instead of moving along in the conversation, you should be playing back or summarizing what you heard from them. And you can literally say, hey, just to play back what I heard from you here, or hey, just to summarize what I heard from you here, I heard A, B, C, and D. And when you summarize what the prospect said, a couple things happen. One, you're showing that you're actually listening and proving that, yes, it's worth you sharing information with me because I'm not just sitting here nodding my head, not listening. But then two, you'd be amazed at the number of times that they yes and you, where they say, yeah, Nick, you got it right, and then they share even more information. And so when you play back what you heard, it's actually even more effective than you asking a question because it incentivizes them to keep sharing more. Number five is if the prospect says something that you don't understand, they use a word you don't understand, they talk about a concept that's foreign to you, they mention someone by name and you don't know who that is, for heaven's sakes, tell them that you don't understand and ask them to clarify. I watch so many salespeople screw this up because they want the prospect to think that they get it right away. They want them to think that they're really, really smart. And that's wrong because then you end up not understanding their situation. A really great quote that I heard is, you should be trading your cleverness for bewilderment on a sales call. So don't be afraid of sort of looking silly and being like, wait a minute, I didn't get that. Or I actually haven't heard that term before. What does that mean? And your prospect will teach you and clarify. Stop pretending that you get it right away and tell them when you don't. Number 6 is a question, which is, can you tell me a little bit more more about that. You'd be amazed if the prospect shares something and you say, could you tell me a little bit more about that? They will tell you a little bit more about that. And I think a lot of sellers, they think that they've got to ask these really interesting, creative, like intelligent questions. And sometimes you can be like, hey, that's interesting. Can you tell me more about how you're doing that? Number 7 is my favorite one, and it is bring a warm cup of tea onto your sales calls. When my prospect finishes talking, what I do is I force myself to take a quick sip of tea. And the reason that I do this is intellectually I know that when my prospect finishes talking, I'm supposed to wait like 3 beats before responding, because if I give them a little bit of room, they might like actually have more to share. And if I don't immediately jump in with me talking, they might keep going and share more. But it's kind of hard to do that. Like I can't always restrain myself. And the best tool that I've used is by bringing tea onto a sales call. It forces me not to jump in right away when they finish talking. So that is the video. That is how I make my talk to listen ratio a bit more equitable. That's how I get my prospect to open up. If you like this video, great, I appreciate it, but let me know in the comments what you are doing different than what I talked about here to get your prospect to open up or to improve your talk to listen ratio. I'd like to learn from you all also. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.